So I wanted to make a distinction that we're talking about over here nefesh ruach chaya, neshama chaya yechida. Yeah, so we're going to talk chaya yechida in a minute, but I want to make a point which maybe was not said so clear yesterday. It's obvious that we all have, even in the youngest stages of our life, when the main thing that's active is a nefesh, it doesn't mean to say that we don't have a yechida and a chaya and a neshama and a ruach, right? It's that what we're describing is now, are they present, are they the dominant aspect of our being in our body? But even, let's say, when the neshama is, let's say, not in the person's body, it's still active in pushing through the whatever prevalent part of the person is existing. Through that part, the neshama tries to impact itself.
I don't know what that means.
It means to say that even if a person,
like, I know that's the claim.
No, but let's say it's not complicated. In other words, we have.
Thinking of my excited, happy 8-year-old self, just got excited by an ice cream. But it's not just the ice cream; it's also lifefulness. There's I could hear that there's like a ruach of the nefesh. Also, maybe there's a bit of Torah. I don't see any impact of levels higher than the nefesh.
The way it's hard for me to prove it in a child.
Okay.
But definitely in situations of an adult where, let's say, the person is extremely far from their neshama, right? And there's, let's say, a tremendous amount of chet, and so therefore you're not going to say the neshama is the dominant part of the world.
Right.
But the neshama is still active, and there's certain feelings that are expressed, certain pulls, certain this anguish that happens in certain situations where it's sending its waves into the human being, and it's experienced in like this deep voice, this place of like something is uncomfortable with me, and it's experienced as something,
AKA time to stressy.
That's what it is.
Well, I don't understand why can an 8-year-old, I notice in my grandchildren, it's true that maybe when they say something very spiritual, they're trying to please or their parents, or they know it's, whatever, but I think there's some element of it which is that they actually believe that this is this is the right thing, and this is right.
I definitely think that a child has a consciousness of Elokut that goes beyond just. I think a person, a little baby, a little child, 2-3 years old, can understand the concept of God, and I don't think that's what's the main functioning aspect of their life, but they can definitely have experiences of it and know it and have
Like
how you can have conversations about the world and what the source of everything. As long as it's in simple child language, they can process the fact that they're not the makar of the bria. And so on that level, for sure, and they can't process, let's say, complicated emotions, but they can feel a little bit of it. So it does have some kind of, they can tell the difference if something is emotionally healthy or not emotionally healthy. They can't necessarily verbalize it, and they can't necessarily even motivate their entire life on it, but there's a sense to it. So I just think that these kochos and nefesh exist. They're just not the dominant factor. And the reason why I'm saying this is more important for what we're going to learn. What we learned about neshama and what we learned about chaya yechida is that we all have experiences with these kochos, even if they're not the predominant experience we have all day long, right? So like all of us, if, as we said before, the point of neshama, when neshama is misgala in a person, what's really happening is that their cheshik is for sod, their cheshik is for elokut, their cheshik for ein sof, right? So even if we don't have that, but there are certain times where we have a certain hisorus that comes into ourselves that goes beyond. It's not like I sat there and I engineered this. It's a feeling of that comes from beyond. Where what that is an expression of my neshama, which is directly back to Hashem. It's always in there and showing up in certain situations. And it's like, for example, as the Baal HaTanya brings down, that even the Pshutei Am, even the people who are super far, when they came to Mesiras Nefesh, if they're going to die al Kiddush Hashem, suddenly they woke up and they had an incredible hisoros, right? That's an expression of the neshama waking up and expressing itself. Or a certain Bali Tshuva, tells stories of like, I was in India and I just had this incredible feeling of whatever it is, that there's millions of stories. Those are an expression of neshama showing up. Maybe it's not always, not constantly there, but it does send its waves of like, here, feel this, know this, right? And in terms of hasaga, I think that we can all identify with the experience of when you understand things, it doesn't have to happen. There could be a logical sequence where I thought about this, I worked this out, and this came to me, and it makes sense, and you can follow like a computer. But there are many, many times where it's sort of like, I know something, let me explain it to myself what I know, right? I kind of get a feel for it. I have to verbalize and put it into my own language and my own reality, right? So the truth is that, like the Vilna Gaon says in the Gemara in the Megillah, the Gemara in Megillah says, if a person is meyageya umatzasa, if he works hard and he finds Torah, then you believe him, right? So the Vilna Gaon says, why did it say matzasa? Yagata, and then you were matzliach with your hard work. It doesn't work like that, because the way hasaga always works is you have something which comes down beyond your kalim, and your kalim are then trying to interpret what you found, right? And all of the work that we do is not an inherent connection of like, I worked intellectually, mathematically, and then this came to me. I understood this. Instead, it's just creating the environment which you can have a download from the higher places of your being, and your brain is now placed to translate that higher understanding. And I think that as a teacher, I can just tell you this happens all the time, is that things that I have no idea how I know, I just know, and then I'm trying to figure out, what was that? Okay, and I'll explain it, right? So that's an expression of the neshama.
Wait, yeah, that was the part I was waiting for. Why is that an expression of a neshama? Surely it's just an expression of that which is immediately beyond you in this moment, which means it could be an expression of ruach also. It could be an expression of really anything that is just the next step beyond your consciousness. That's the classic yesh me'ayin like dynamic. It's that which is hidden from you, and then that which starts to become real. And it depends on where your consciousness is holding. It could be your neshama.
What I mean to say is that you can get a feeling for it, that you know it.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's a neshama knowing. I don't want to like label everybody's thing that they know, but now need to translate within themselves how they know it and articulate it. I don't know, to label all of that as neshama is strange to me. Like sometimes probably neshama.
I actually think
it's probably not.
No, I actually think that I actually think it's not even accurate in terms of saying it neshama. I think it actually comes from a higher place. But my point, first of all, is to show you that we have parts of ourselves that are active, that are not the cognizant part of ourselves on a consistent level. I have an antenna up that is beyond me, right? And I can't really put my finger on exactly what that is, but I know it's there. And when I try to put it into the kalim that I am conscious of, right? I'm using different kalim, I'm using translators.
Okay.
Right?
I just don't want to call that.
That's the experience that I'm discussing,
neshama.
right? So
Okay.
you can have kochos inside of you that work, that are not the predominant functioning way that I deal with every day in, day out. That's the one main point I was trying to bring out.
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of the concept of neshama, he brings a very interesting point, which we didn't speak about yesterday. We spoke about how the neshama is predominantly interested in the lakut and trying to see how the connection between this world and the revelation of Hashem. But he brings a point over here that first of all, the Ofek HaChaim HaChadosh Yiftach LaAdam Laviu Ladur Ba'olama Shel Or Shem Olamas HaRatzon VeHaKavana. The place that the neshama operates, we're all very conscious of actions, the power of actions. We're also very conscious of the power of emotions. But intent, What's the intent behind everything, right? That being a huge change in what actually happened, the power of the intent, that because I had a certain l'shem yuchud kutchabrichu, or I didn't say l'shem yuchud kutchabrichu, right? How much is my intention to how much is that my intention on a mitzvah or my intention in a relationship make predominantly impact the relationship? That's a neshama consciousness, because you're looking on the level of, like, it's the pre-architecture. It's like the not the actual thing that you experience, which is the feelings and the actions, but the mechanics under why these feelings existed, and what pushed these actions. And that's a sort of an internal blueprint of the world. And the world of neshama is the understanding of that part of the universe. And he says over here, a fascinating thing, he says when a person understands this erech ritzon of a koach pu'ulaso, he understands how much his ratzon impacts the world, hazerem hachayim hashofeh b'dibur hapeh, he'll understand how his words have power over the world. Memela tiskadel hatzfila bekirbo lahargish mitziusa v'aveasa hamamoshes lo pachos me'agashas pulas hayadayim b'totzotzeah. He'll start experiencing how the power of creation happens through words more than it happens.
No,
the truth is it's more, because, like, for example, the impact of Hitler through his wording was much greater than any of the sum total of whatever his soldiers did with their actions, because he impacted everybody, right? So the truth is that words, when they are creative words, have a greater impact. That's why the shorish of the world was actually created with dibur, not asiyah, right? So we as human beings, we have two ways we can speak. One, we can describe what is. We can just interact with, there's the facts of the Bria, and I'm a player in this stage, right? And the props of the play I don't have control of, right? And so all of the description, the dibur I'm talking about is describing what I interface with. That's a level of dibur. That's a lower level of dibur. A higher level of dibur, where it comes from the as he's describing, from the ratzon, that I want things to be a certain way. And I have understanding that my ratzon impacts the core ratzon of the world. And so what I want, Hashem is willing to go with my ratzon when I express it. He's waiting for me to co-create the world. And therefore, when I take this ratzon and I put it into wording that Hashem make this happen, or this should happen in the world, right? And it could be an expression of tefillah, as he brings down. It could be also an expression of influence through hashpah, that you see something and you want it to be different, and you go out and you lead, make differences, right? You're getting in touch with a creative power that actually has control over the fundamental functionings of the universe. And you can actually change teva through dibur. That's the concept that tzaddik goes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mekayim.
What about on the negative side? Let's say
Curses.
curses, or even say a lot of people speaking Lashon Hara. Is that?
Yes, Lashon Hara is a perfect example of the power of dibur, which is destructive, it kills 3 people, the Medrash says, right? Right? Because so that's an expression of the koach of peh has, like anything, has equal power. It can be Lashon Tov, like, we say, where do we say Mekabel in Tefillah? The concept of Lashon Hara, that we should Zachar Miriam, right? So the Kavanas in I think it's the Ari, if I'm not mistaken. Lahodas lecha le'achetcha be'ava le'ava shmecha lahoidos lecha. That's not to speak Lashon Hara. In other words, the opposite of Lashon Hara is Hodah, is seeing Hashem in the world and actualizing it. And the same way when you praise someone you actually influence their ability to show up like that. The more you praise them, the more you create the energy, the space, the environment in which they want to show up more like that, and they can show up more like that. Lashon Hara is Tzur Yolad Chateshi, is actually creating a place where the Shechina and all the good in the world, whichever it may be, it's expressed in a human being, it doesn't make a difference. The good in the world is able to show up, right? So the power of Peh is a creative power to either create Ra or Tov, right? But the more a person is in tune with their Dibur, that's the Sod that Avram was given the Koach of Bracha and gave it to Yitzchak and gave it to Yaakov. Because in spiritual terms, a human being, in one sense, is lower than the entire universe, like the Medrash you were quoting. So he was created after all of the things in the world, and therefore he's that's the context of his universe. Yes, this is a given. Now tistader with the fact that there's all kinds of teva. There's an ocean. There's this and there's that. And then you have people like Pinchas Ben Yair who comes and says, "Listen, I gotta go to Pinchas Shvuyim. Listen, this the Gaon, I think it's called, the split because I'm serving the Ribono Shalom." And what the spiritual meanings of that is that the neshama, the Nefesh HaChaim speaks this out in grave detail in Shar Aleph. The neshama is in the place of creation. That's the source. It's connected to Chelik Kal Mimal. It's connected in the place of the source energy of the world. It's part of that. The Torah, Klal Yisrael Echad, the neshama is Klal Yisrael Echad. So the same way the Torah was used as a creative power to create the world, like it says in Bereshis, Yihi Or is Osios HaTorah. The neshama is part of that. So if we do things that include our neshama in an action, we're accessing something which is highest, the source of the Bria. And therefore, by definition, it has control over all of the rest of the details of the Bria because it's source energy. And therefore, it can shift all of the sources, which is why certain tzaddikim were able to, with Shemos HaKadoshim, do all kinds of crazy stuff. Because the Shemos are the source energy of what happens. It's like the molecule, it's like the program of the computer, right? So you shift something in the program of the computer, the whole screen looks different because you're in the source code, right? So the source code of the Bria is Osios and Shemos and Ritzonos of Hashem. And because he wants us to be Shutafim in the Bria, when a person is in that cognizance and understanding that we are part of Elokut, we are the Gilui of Elokut in the world, if they live that way, then they can, let's say Rabbi Chaim Mendoza was able to say, Misha Omer Chometz Yadik, Misha Omer Shemetz Yadik, Chometz Yadik. Because he's seeing how there's Misha Omer Chometz and Mishemen, that's what's making Shemen Nadlik. So what's the difference? It can be switched also. It's not complicated when you're in that realm of reality. And that's the sort of tzaddikim who are able to be B'chol Nisim. And I'm not talking about things that, like, I know people personally who watch Chab Ben Zion Abba Shaul, who lived, 20, 30 years ago, do this consistently. Say things, and then it happened. And there was, cure people for leukemia type of dibur, right? So he's saying that's an expression of neshama, where Misha Zachal Lisnosus Ha'aras Neshama Behirus, who nikra Adam Hashalem, the Karnemar Ba Batigzar Omer, Vayakam Lacha. Right? That Ipiv Diburo Nasta Hechel Unishmas Kodesh, Asher Ein Kate Yicholos Otzim Hashbos Al Tevel Melo, Ki Atzula Michor Hashem, Uskulas Oro Chokok Bo. If a person is now a Hechel for his neshama, his neshama is constantly, that's the power that's active in the body, then that's the power that's going to be making all of his actions, his actions, his dibur work, and therefore he's source coding, he's accessing the source of everything.
You can't stop it.
Where's the tablecloths?
On the bima. In the bima.
Oh, you want them washed for Pesach?
I want them washed, yeah. The ones that are dirty, yeah. Okay?
So where are the dirty ones?
In there. Take a look.
You mean I've got to go through the whole lot?
Yeah.
Love you, Rabbi.
Love you too. Okay.
Is that the source of his bodhidut? Is that getting someone to articulate what they want and so that'll have a better chance of happening, to talk it out?
I don't think that that's the same topic of Hisbodrus. I think the topic of Hisbodrus,
I'm not saying it's the main part of his bodhidut, but it is
it's definitely the topic of tefillah.
Okay, but
Tefillah
why
b'chol
would
yisod.
it be a outgrowth? Maybe it's not what it's essentially about, but a positive outgrowth with bodhidus is you are now articulating what you really want to do and change of yourself and what your hopes and dreams, and you keep doing that, so you're perhaps helping it happen because you have a framework to.
In order to have this conversation, we have to have a conversation understanding what Rabbi Nachman was trying to accomplish, me'aver, to the topic of tefillah. Because tefillah is an integral part of, and the muhus of tefillah really is like, why in the world does Hashem need you to daven? I mean, He knows what you need. It's not like you have to convince Him to be good. He loves you.
Right, it's yourself. It's what he's changing you. It's not guiding.
Yes, but it's a little deeper than that. It's that He wants you to be the creator. So His ratzon will be dependent, the revelation of His ratzon, which He wants there to be good in the world. Like Terem, what did it say in Pasuk in Bereshis? The whole world was waiting until Adam Arishon. So what, He didn't want the world? He created the whole 7 days. It's all there. All the DNA is sitting there waiting. So we know what He wants. But until Adam matches his ratzon with the ratzon elyon, he won't have his ratzon be revealed in the world. So the concept of tefillah is matching, is my ratzon and his ratzon becoming one. That's an expression of tefillah. Now, once you understand that's tefillah, right? Now you have to understand, why did Rabbi Nachman feel that wasn't enough? He needs a different vehicle for people to be able to express themselves besides expressing their ratzon, that I want you, Hashem, to reveal yourself in this way. What was he doing? So in my limited understanding, I didn't spend a lot of time learning Rabbi Nachman's what he was trying to accomplish. My limited understanding is he was trying to make it a relationship that is more palatable, like a human relationship. He wasn't just, tefillah can be like going to a spiritual experience, then going back to your life, and he's like over there. What Rabbi Nachman was trying to accomplish was speaking to him like a friend, like he's involved in day-to-day life, like it says in the poskim that women are halachically supposed to pray all the time. They're supposed to pray shachar and mincha, right? Says the Magen Avraham, our women don't do that, right? You know why? Because they're davening all the time, right? And especially the natural. I spoke to many women and they express this all the time. They're much more in tune with, like, constantly in relationship, because they're a relationship being. They don't have an orla. They're constantly in contact with Hashem as part of their life, right? Assuming they don't have issues with their emunah, which can happen. But in a natural feminine being is like constantly in tune with Mitzias Hashem and involved in every pirtei pratim of their life. Like there's once the I forgot which Rebbe it was, but you know he had a maid and she was going to quit. So he goes to the corner, he davens to Hashem, and he says, Hashem, please have the maid not quit. And so someone said, that's what the Rebbe is, that's the Rebbe's davening about? He says, well, who else should I ask? I mean, I want the maid not to leave. I shouldn't ask God? Like, it's the whole tefillah can be a very abstract, non-connective part to your day-to-day life. And Rabbi Nachman was trying to make him involved like you talk to everybody else in your life. I think that's more than he was trying to do. So I would say actually that's more a ruach topic, not a neshama topic. It's a day-to-day life that a person has a functioning relationship and consistently with an emotional.
I understand that's the primary, but I'm saying an outgrowth of it is that you end up articulating things that you want, which could
Yes.
begin. Of course, it's like therapy might be an outgrowth of therapy, is that you get a person to actually articulate positive things that they want for their life, and that has a
and then it becomes like tefillah, and then it's an aspect of tefillah for sure, right? But to me, the you know, when we think about dibur, we don't think about it. It comes from the neshama. In fact, the way the Unklis, Chagam of Unklis, Hiel Nefesh Chaya, Yipach Bapa Nishmas Chaya, Yelad Nefesh Chaya, it's clear that the neshama was put into the body, and then something else happened in the world, Vayil Nefesh Chaya, which is the Dora Shlishi, like the Ramban speaks that clearly on the pasuk. And to Unklis translate that is that he had the ability to speak. So in some sense, Dibur is actually a combination of neshama and guf, how it's expressed. That's what the ruach is. It's the place where it fluctuates. It goes back and forth. Bringing high concepts down into normal maisim to translating it in the process of midos, right? So that's really where speech is at. But what I understand what he's saying is there's a higher speech. There's two types of speeches. There's creative speech and there's descriptive speech. And the people who are really in tune with the neshama is always existing in their life, like we see tzaddikim who are poel nisim, it's because they are in tune with the source, like he's saying, the ratzon, and they're expressing that always in their dibur, and therefore their dibur has power. Their dibur has tefillah power. Okay, that makes sense?
Can we plug this into Ratzon and Midas just for a minute? So, because
okay, every midah, this is why these words can be very confusing. When we say there's Eser Sviros, what we're saying is there's Eser Ritzonos. Every midah is an expression of Ratzon in its core, because the source of everything is always Ratzon, and then afterwards it's expressed in Seichel and expressed in different aspects of relationship, but it's in its core, it's a Ratzon. So when I'm talking about the Ratzon, I don't necessarily mean that I want things, because wanting things is I can want a burger is also an expression of desire. What I mean to say, the core Ratzon of humanity in its deepest sense, which is Ratzon Elyon, the same way he wanted us, we want him. It's the core of this most internal Ratzon of our being, which is before everything is a Ratzon for Dveikus and Gilui Lakus. So when that Ratzon is in place, a person is constantly searching and going to reveal how every part of his life is an expression of Elokut. And with that Ratzon, you're tapped into the source of your being, which is your neshama, which is constantly what a neshama is a chelik elokam yimal that was separated, and like anything that it was pulled away from its source wants to go back, right? That's the type of Ratzon I'm talking about. Does that make sense? More clarity?
Only in its own space, not when I try to translate it anyway.
Okay, so for example, let's say you have ritzonos of love. You have ritzonos of meaning, right? You have ritzonos of pleasure. They go very deep in your essence, right? And they are very deep in your functionality every single day. They are the core of all of what pushes you to function. There's even sometimes not revealed ratzon inside of you, but it will always be there to haunt you and to push you, which is that you want to not be separated. It's a feeling of loneliness, a feeling of lack of safety. It's a feeling of needing to be part of this greater experience called source, right?
So the midas are my translation of how I think I'm going to experience or achieve that in my world. But
So-
the ritzonos are the source ritzonos from where those midas originate. And you're defining the ritzonos as being those that are primal enough to connect me back with Hashem by aligning our ritzonos. Is that accurate?
I think that I think you have to make one point, and then we can plug in back what you said, which is that again you have to remember that there's different realms. A person can be very clearly in tune with their needs, and be in tune with the fact needing love and meaning and all these things, but be devoid of the understanding that they're looking for elokut. They're looking for a relationship with source.
Okay.
Right? We see many people live like that. Okay? When you enter into the world of neshama, you actually it's like it says in this farm, you go to a different realm, you go Olam Habriya, which is that in there the consciousness shifts. I am in touch with the part of me that isn't satisfied with just a human relationship. I'm not satisfied with my meaning being only in this world. I need it to be nitzchi, right? I need my pleasure to not only be from the experiences that I have in this world, but I need to experience the divine, and that's the pleasure that I'm looking for. It's something which, for a lot of us, maybe we don't even touch with so much. In our relationship with these words are like, yeah, I've experienced that once, like, I don't know, Yom Kippur one day, or when I was in this really tight space, and I was very far, and I had this pulled back, right? There are hisnotzus of our neshama coming inside, right? But we can look at certain tzaddikim, and we can see that they looked at the world as a place where they can have an experience of Elokut all day long. And they understood everything in the context of revelation of Hashem, and reading things like the Zohar, reading things like the Arizal. The way they looked at every part of the Bria was in those eyes. That's the consciousness of Neshama. Now, it's something hard for us to relate to, and very, very few people have ever gotten there, right? But it's important for us to know that we have minuscule experiences of that happening, and we can relate to the experiences through seeing it revealed in certain tzaddikim. It's like, oh yeah, I have something to do with that. That's what that is, right? I relate to that in some way, and therefore I can nurture it and understand it. It's not a weird. It's something that I shouldn't give it credit. It should be given very big credit. And even if I don't have it all the time, but every once in a while I tap into something which is very real inside of my being, and I'm not always conscious of it.
I think to give us more credit than that. In other words, you come across people who, let's say, they do they're film critic, right? So they will write these long articles about analyzing the film and what they intended and the global ideas that you can get from that. And at the end of the day, you ask, okay, but what's at stake here? What do you accomplish? So maybe you get clarity on the motivations of people and behavioral stuff, but when you're learning Torah, you're also getting insights into a big picture of why God created the world and what the potential relationship is. God is opening vistas into. So I think anybody involved in Torah, even if you're not a big tzaddik or something, is already dealing on a whole different dimension. And I think a lot of people are. A lot of people are there, even if they're not, framing everything that way. But there's
right, and it's like we spoke about before, that within Ruach, it's a levush of neshama, so you're always going to be touching on it. Mm-hmm. You're always going to be interacting it in some way. Like the whole concept of having Torah means there is a borei who has a kavanah for the bria, and you're always interacting with that concept, even if it's not the forefront. When you're trying to figure out the details of the mitzvah, you're not realizing, oh, this is part of Tikkun Olam, but you are aware in some macro type of way that yes, there's a whole plan over here, and it's really a question of consciousness, a question of what your main focus is on, what level of reality you process the world with lens, and the more a person processes the world through that, the more they're giving space for their neshama to be consistently showing up in their conscious place. I think it's important to define something else, which is that when we're talking about, maybe I should have said this in the beginning, like that pasuk says, "Vayipach ba'achvat nishmas chayim." Right, the Adam was on the ground, so the goof is already there. Viva nishmas chayim, v'Adam nefesh chayim. When we say Elokai neshama shenasata bi, who's the me? What's the self? Right.
Right. So people often say the ruach.
So the ruach is the place where you can experience a lot more. The ruach. The reason why people relate to ruach is because it's the place where it's in the middle ground. It's by definition the place where it relates to thought and it puts it into action, because it's the midos of action. So you're in consciousness of every part. But in depth, what it really means is that I have a lot of parts, and who am I I am the fact that I have a lot of parts. I'm the sum total. The same way when you put hydrogen and oxygen together, you have water. You have a third thing. When you put a neshama and a goof together, and you have all these parts, what they create is this person called Adam. And Adam has the ability to interact with all of his parts, right? And to be conscious more or less of one of them. But the place that encapsulates all of these things, is able to interact with all these things, that's me. And that's the part that is nidon in, like the Gemara in Sota says, I think it is, that the Gemara says that it was a person who was a person who couldn't walk, and a person who couldn't cripple, and a person who couldn't see. Right. So the Gemara says, there was in the paradise, and they went to take the trees, and the Melech says, like, who did it? And the guy says, well, I couldn't do it. I couldn't walk. And the guy says, I couldn't see. And so what happened was that one jumped on the other shoulders. He directed him, and they walked. So the Melech said, oh, I'm going to put them together and judge them together. Right? So what's it saying is that everything that we do in the world needs to have both elements of the neshama and the goof in order to accomplish it. And therefore the judgment, which is going to come in the end, is not going to be on a part. It's going to be in everything together. That's who you are, and that's what is going to determine your relationship with Hashem, Netzach Netzachim. Right? So when we're talking about self,
So how did you, I was going to bring that up when I said I'm fair. I'm hijacking this year to figure, to talk about better. So, but since you brought it up, so the neshama can be involved in something nefarious, because the neshama was involved in this. It was a crime committed by two people saying, "Listen, we both want to steal that thing, and we can't do it ourselves. Let's get together, do it together." So how do we understand the neshama being part of a criminal act?
okay, that's a very good question. Does the neshama have growth? It's basically the question. Is it completely pure and right? So I'll give you an example of growth, neshama growth. The conversation of Moshe and the Malachim is a perfect example of neshama growth. Moshe says to the Malachim says, well, the Torah doesn't belong to you, it belongs in Shemayim. That's a neshama question. It's like, I don't want to be in a body. I'm not interested in being in a body. And Moshe says to the Malachim, no, you can't have Torah without being in Mitzrayim. So the aliyah of the neshama is hisbatlus to Hashem, and saying that this process of which goes against everything that I'm doing is a process that is valuable, and therefore it's worth bal kochan hata nolad. I'll be masking to it in some degree. So that's an example, first of all, of growth of the neshama. So take that concept.
I didn't get maybe there's a better one with Moshe says that the Torah doesn't apply to you. Do you have these?
Klum yesh lecha, klum yu mitzrayim. That's what I'm saying. The Torah.
It says you don't have. Do you try to? You
have a father. You have right.
Lust and this and that. I mean, all these right. So,
right. So in other words, what's that teaching you?
Yeah.
It's teaching you that the upper spiritual realm doesn't identify with the necessity of body. Hashem, the Torah, is a chiddush. It's going to teach you that the ultimate elokut comes from a combination of neshama and guf. But a neshama has to learn that. So neshama can be in resistance. I've had many times where people's souls are in resistance to their bodies, consistently. People that want to come into the world, for example, they fight, or when they're here, they're throwing a tantrum, right? Another example of that, which is not the same thing, I just gave you an example, where the neshama thinks that it's fooled by the Yetzer Hara, like Adam Arishon, that it's actually spiritually advantageous to do chet. And all of the real chatoim in Klal Yisrael were ones that had appealed even to a neshama level. Right? There was confusion. It's like spiritually it makes sense for you to do this. Egel Azav is like that also.
Right, they saw Moshe dead and
right. So I think that means that the neshama was involved in that decision because it was confused by the tzad hara that this is the best way for it to be a neshama. And there's a level of hisbatlus that the neshama has to have, going with, like Avraham Avinu had to go with Hashem to the Akedas Yitzchak, where his neshama probably said to him, Chabib, we don't kill. What are we doing? And he's like, I don't know, but we're doing it. right? And that's a self energy. It's a decision to say, me, all of the components that I'm making, the place where we have Bechira is not just the Neshama. It's everything together. And when that part of you is able to have Shalom and understand the relevance of Guf and the relevance of, it can also be able to understand, it's not the same avoda of being able to understand the relevance of Guf. The avoda of being batal to Hashem is a different avoda. It's an avoda of where you realize that even though you have Bechira and have power, the ultimate Bechira is to be bocher, not to be bocher. In other words, to go with, to be nif'al. Let me explain this a little bit deeper. The first stage is that we're totally a victim. Okay, we have no Bechira. That's against Kavanas Abriya. Hashem wants us to have Bechira. But He also, if we have Bechira and we're in charge, we block Him. He can't be the Melech anymore. So the ultimate Bechira is to use our Bechira to be in a relationship where we put Him completely in charge through our own choice. Mm-hmm. Very much like a woman's relationship with intimacy. If she trusts her husband so much to really take over and bring her to a place of ecstasy and then a place of receiving, right? That's the ultimate version of neshama. That is neshama growth also. To be able to do that, to be able to have Bechira, want to have Bechira, understand its value, and also understand that the best way to have Bechira is to be nimelach, right? That's a very spiritual, it's not a goof topic. The goof doesn't care, right? How you use your Bechira. It's like, if you keep me happy, I'm gonna be a good Eved, you know what I mean? But that's a very spiritual way of understanding. That's what Chazal are bringing out with the sun and the moon. Like the moon complains, like, how could you have two Malchus? Oh, okay, if you complain, you have to be small. You have to be received. And at the end of the day, we're not going to complain because we're going to be totally working together, the Kutchabrichu and Shchinte, right? That's a neshama challenge. So doesn't neshama have growth? Yes, the neshama has growth. And therefore you can places in Chazal depicting where the mistakes happened, where neshama was completely participating. That make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, the whole snake and the conversation with Baba was all about
clear
saying this is a mitzvah. This is a higher form of consciousness to eat from this. It's
right.
not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
Right.
But
even key, it has lashon hara in it, that it was saying something bad about Hashem. Right. It was the way it worked was Hashem doesn't have your best interest in mind. Mm-hmm. Right. He wants you to be Elohim. Right. So there's always an aspect of.
But you're saying that the Neshama can fall for it because it is also needs to.
Wait, the Neshama fell for it for a different reason.
And the Neshama fell for it because it was confused that it was obviously, like he said in the pasuk clearly, if you're going to listen to God, you won't be like Him. Right? He doesn't want you to be like Him. Mm-hmm. Right? So that's a spiritual confusion. Believe me, the goof doesn't care. Well, what's the difference? Even the midos don't care. It's like, all right.
Is that true? The midos don't care? I guess it's true. It's weird because you would have expected that if the goof was made b'tzelem Elokim, there would be a desire within the goof itself.
But it's not the topic. It's not what the goof needs.
I don't have developed enough understanding yet.
Well, think about your needs of your body and your needs.
No, I know my body doesn't care.
Right.
But
I'm not saying that I'm right. I don't know, but intuitively, I don't think the body cares. We still have to discuss Chaya and Yechida, and then the next step we have to do is understand this all on a national level.
All right.
Then we have to start for Pesach.
We only have one more day, right?
Right.
Friday is a tough
So
day.
no, I can't do Friday.